Namaskar, Sasriyakal, good morning, friends, and Vanakkam to all our friends across the India. Pop musician having songs featured in US TV shows and pitching songs with the likes of One Direction to then becoming an optician featured in Financial Times, who's spoken on a panel for the heads of industry and styling celebrities across UK in bespoke eyewear. This year's finalist for International Optician of the Year. Today, we have a truly exceptional guest who has revolutionized the way we think about eyewear. Joining us is one and only Mr. Daniel Scott, famously known as the Eyewear Stylist. Apart from being a qualified dispensing optician, he is also a trained personal stylist with keen eye on fashion and an unparalleled approach to finding a perfect fit for every face. So join me in welcoming none other than Mr. Daniel Scott. So
Thank you
Daniel,
so
we
much.
officially welcome you on the
Thank you
show.
so much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to meet you. And isn't it amazing how global eyewear reaches now with things like social media and stuff like that? It's been so amazing. I was speaking with a personal stylist from India only this morning on an Instagram live. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to hear from you and how everything works over in India with eyewear, what the traditional approaches are, and yeah, hopefully I can give my own take on things which people can take away from today as well.
Great, great, great. So looking forward to that. So quickly moving ahead, I've got a first question for you.
Mhm.
So Daniel, can you tell us about your journey into the world of eyewear and
Mhm.
how you became the eyewear stylist?
Yeah, of course. So, kind of like as you alluded to, I'm probably not a natural person to become an optician in a way, because I'm very, very creative. So I used to have a pop band, as you say. We'd kind of tour across the country, had songs and TV shows, nearly got signed by Ed Sheeran's management. Had this really, really fun pop
Wow.
career. But I grew up with opticians for parents. So both my mum and my dad are ophthalmic opticians, and basically when I split up with my band, their dispensing optician had just left their practice to go and move somewhere else to be with their family, and they needed someone just to help them initially, just in the intermediary whilst they were going to find someone. And obviously my band had just split up, and I said, Dan, could you just come and help us whilst we're in between things? So I went there and just was glazing lenses in the lab. And then my dad said to me, he said, Dan, I know you might have never considered this, but there's actually potential for optics to work quite well for you with your music background, because once you become qualified, you can go self-employed and essentially locum. So you could do a locum shift in Glasgow and play a gig there that night, then do a locum shift in Manchester and play a gig, or you could tour for 2 weeks and then do a load of locum shifts. So he pitched it to me as a flexible career around my music. And parents have a funny way of convincing you into things, I guess. And so that's how he sold it to me. And so he put me straight. He said, look, and you might not enjoy it, but I'm going to put you on the course, the ABDO, Association of British Dispensing Opticians course, to become qualified as a dispensing optician. So if you don't like it, just leave it. But I'm going to put you on and see how you go. So essentially I went on that course. It was all spur of the moment, all happened with the space of a month. So I'd gone from signing girls' t-shirts to then glazing lenses, which is quite a juxtaposition and a culture shock. But then, yeah, essentially, I was then I was doing the course, and you know, I was always all right, interested in the course, but my dad could see, you know, what still wasn't quite grabbing me, and I always thought that. Traditionally, I thought optics was a bit boring. You know, I've grown up with opticians for parents. So it's like, these frames are a bit drab. And so my dad put me in charge of choosing the frames for their independent opticians. And so when I did that, obviously I had to do some research. And I started researching eyewear and looking across the world for creative frames that I could find. And I found a brand called Teo that I absolutely love, from Belgium. These really creative, crazy colors, shapes, things like that. And then what happened was I started getting really excited, and that's when my creative side of things came into the fray. I started traveling to trade shows across the world, like Silmo in Paris, Mido in Milan, and seeing all these amazing different frames made of vinyl records, out of leather, out of coffee beans. And I was like, there is actually a really exciting world of eyewear out there. So what happened is I worked for my parents for 2 years at their independent opticians, and then, but living with your parents in your mid-20s is not the dream. And there wasn't too much going on in Herefordshire. So I applied for a job at a really high-end opticians in Manchester. I've got family up there and things like that. And it was all about, you need to be world-class this, world-class that. And I was like, I don't even know if I can apply for this because I've still got one more year left to qualify. But I applied for the position, and I turned up in my Teo glasses and these really funky things. I was so passionate about eyewear that they gave me the job, even though I had 1 year
Wow.
left to qualify. And so I ended up working at this high-end opticians. I think we did £800,000 turnover in the first year. Then we did about
Oh,
900,000 in the next year, and about 1 million in the year that I left. And so what that did was it really opened me up to being able to work with more high-end eyewear, lots of interesting clients. And then basically the plan was obviously to go back to my music initially. So I was going to go back and like go into the bands and then do the locuming around it. So I did that. I went to do the locuming and do my music. But what I found was when I went to the locum days and work at these independent opticians, I was doing all their record sales days and loads of happy clients and things. And they're like, oh my God. So then whenever I'd kind of go to leave to do something, Dan, actually, before you go, would you mind training our staff to do what you've done there? And I ended up on like a panel with one of the heads of Specsavers, the advisor to the NHS on the future of optics, at
okay.
100% optical, like the top optical exhibition in the UK here. And I started thinking, actually, there must be something to this career that I considered a backup career. And so I continued doing the locoming, and I'd always had visions of maybe doing my own thing. But I don't know about you, but what I kind of got frustrated with in a way was there's lots of brilliant opticians, but the people that were claiming they were styling opticians. And I was like, that is absolutely fine. But I was just curious, what are your style credentials? In terms of what gives you the right to give me style advice I should listen to outside of just optical advice. And so the answers never truly fulfilled me. So what I did is I was like, well, if I'm going to give style advice to people, I want it to be style advice people can trust. So rather than just be a dispensing optician, giving an opinion-based thing of I like those, I don't like those, I went down to London to train as a personal stylist, to learn everything I could about the whole outfit, body shapes and colors as well. And so I think color analysis was one of the biggest things that I took away from that, is the fact of how color can truly influence our complexion and how we look and how we feel. And the closer that color is to our face, the greater the impact that can have. And so obviously with eyewear being on our face, like if we're wearing a color that's draining us as a guy, we don't really tend to put on
Yes.
much makeup to fight against it. Whereas women
Right.
might put on a bit more to do so.
True.
And so that was one of the ththings that I started introducing to my color as the eyewear stylist process when I launched that in 2021, which was just after COVID. And the same with body shape. There's a lot of correlations with body shape I found with personal styling as what I would do with face shape, and I found that really interesting as well. So after I trained as a personal stylist, which was about 2019, obviously COVID happened. And COVID in 2020, I think, gave a lot of people a chance to sit back and think, what should I do next when I come out of this? Because a lot of us, we get into our own jobs and we kind of turn
Right.
up the next day and
True.
we're carrying on. But not really, and we might have ideas of doing things, but then we're too busy to actually sit down and think about doing them. And so
True.
COVID gave me the chance to really sit back and think, let's do this. Let's plan this
Right.
out how I
Right.
could do it. So I launched my space in Media City in Manchester. So I'm just above where they film lots of TV shows like The Voice and Countdown and various big TV shows here. They're just filming just on the floor below me right now where I'm filming today. And I launched that in 2021. And since launching the Eyewear Stylist, like you said, I was in the Financial Times in the first month. I started working with TV shows, with films, and it's really kind of blown up. So I'm really, really grateful how things have turned out. But that's my journey on how I got here. I'm sorry it wasn't a shorter answer, but I hope that fulfilled the question at least.
It was amazing, and I was so intrigued in your answer that I saw your story in the way you've come from various fields, and not getting complacent. Being from an optical background, sometimes people tend to become complacent. They don't test their limits. They don't want
Yeah.
to check test their boundaries. And you
Mm.
doing that is absolutely phenomenal. Having a well-established independent opticianry practice, coming out of that comfort zone, working in the places, gaining that experience as a personal stylist also, and then implementing into this field of eyewear, which
Mhm.
was, highly needed and recommended. And I'm sure, and that's the reason because you chosen the path which is not being traveled by money, not being dared
No.
by money. And that's why you are here today. And so,
Mhm.
how do you feel here to be in India and talking to Indian community? Did you
I
feel
know
like that?
it's
Okay,
amazing.
you
It's
become
really
an
really.
international icon.
Yeah, it's crazy, really. I mean, this has been the mad thing with my journey. So I travel to a lot of the international trade shows every year, and I do encourage anyone that hasn't to definitely make sure you do. And I think, like you said, because we can become complacent, you can easily stick, and you can look at your historical client base and what you've done
Mhm.
previously, and just say it works, okay, and carry on with that. But you can also very slowly become dated. And I think it's really important. And for me, I think it's actually an obligation of mine to travel to the international trade shows to see what's new, see what's coming out in the world of eyewear, to make sure that I'm offering something fresh and that my fashion advice is relevant and contemporary and is not sort of like a bit dated. But basically, when you do travel to those trade shows, you meet interesting other people, you talk, you have different conversations.
Correct.
What are you doing? What are we doing? And it's been crazy that I'll turn up at a show in Milan and have like these Italian opticians say, "Oh, we follow you on social media. We love what you're doing." And they were asking me to help them select eyewear for their own store. I've
Wow.
worked with opticians in France on sustainability. I ended up featuring on a TV show in France talking about sustainable eyewear. And I brought an expert in sustainability in the eyewear sector over to the UK to 100% optical. So, I think it's really amazing to travel and collaborate with other opticians in the industry and support each other. When I was there last time in Milan and Mido this year, I've got a lot of American friends who are doing amazing things out in America. And we're all sitting around choosing eyewear for our own stores together, as a group, like, which was so cool that we have that sort of level of rapport that we can sort of like do that and see what people are doing and asking for advice from each other, because sometimes it
Right.
can feel a bit lonely. Like, when you're selecting eyewear for your own store, it's a huge
Mm.
responsibility because you've
True.
all, every time you choose a frame, it's a risk, isn't it? Like, what if that doesn't
100%.
sell? What if it doesn't work?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and so sometimes actually working with some other people and getting some feedback on what's
Right.
worked well for them, those sorts of things, as a neutral person rather than just the
True.
sales rep on the other side saying, "Oh, this would be
Right.
good, that would be good." You can have a lot more confidence then in your selections. So some things like that's
100%.
been wonderful. But yeah, India is, I say I've never been to India. I'd love to visit sometime, but I'd certainly love to find out about what you guys are doing, and then also, areas you'd like to know a bit more about that maybe you haven't explored yet.
So let me tell you that after this show, you're going to be very, very popular in India as well. And and
That'd be great.
already you have one fan in me. And next time I'm traveling to Mido, I'll be looking forward to meeting you in person. Sure. Yes, so I
Fantastic.
like the way you change your eyewear now. So moving ahead, so Dan, I would like to steal your secret as I will put forward. How do you tailor your services to meet the specific needs of each client? So can you just throw
Right.
some light on
Yeah, of course. Like, so this is a really, really important question. I think it definitely when it comes to styling as well, because there's a huge difference between generic styling and
that? Hmm.
personal styling. Okay. Because I know a lot of people will go, well, if my face shape is what face shape am I? And therefore, what shape should I suit? The thing is,
Right.
the reason that doesn't work personally is because we are individuals. So I want you to think, like, if you had an identical twin brother or an identical twin sister, for any women that are listening, they would wear different clothes to you, right? And they would kind of make different
Sure.
choices in life. They'd have a different job, those sorts of things. They have different lifestyles. So even though genetically you'll have certain stuff with your face shape and your skin tone and your eye color and things like that are consistent, there's still eyewear that you would choose differently relevant to that individual. So the most important part
Sure.
of styling and as an optician is the what we call the discovery conversation. You know, asking those clients individual questions. And I know this can sound silly, but I've trained a lot of opticians, and I always ask people, how many people ask people, when do you wear your glasses? And I know it
Wow.
sounds simple, But a lot of people don't do that. You know, they come out the testing room and go
Mm,
straight into, right, you need varifocals for this, that, the other. When do you wear your glasses is a really important question because it really gives you a lot of interest in the answer in terms of, let's say someone says they're only for reading, right? It's like,
mm,
well, when
right.
do you, there's always a way that you can add expertise into your recommendation. Because the classic thing for someone who, for example, says they're only for reading, they think, I just want the
Okay.
cheapest, they don't really care, they don't see the value in it and stuff. But you can still say, right, if they're only for reading, when you wear them, is it when they're on, they're on? Or do you wear them down the end of your nose so you can look over the top? Because obviously, when you can't see in the distance, it's, you know, when they're on, and they go, oh yeah, no, I do a bit of that. So like, right, well, if you do wear them a bit lower down, what I want to look for is a frame with a longer side here, and it's slightly narrower to make it look over the top.
Right.
Whereas if it's
Right.
when they're on, we'll put it here. Right, so that's just one example. I always ask people their preferences on the bridge fit on the nose. This is a huge
Mm,
thing for people because all of the comfort of a pair of glasses generally comes from how it rests on your nose. As we know, we can always adjust it behind the ear,
right.
but where it rests on the nose is super important. So we've got whether it's nose pads, a keyhole bridge, or a fixed bridge. And
Mm,
that's a really useful question because people haven't always considered that. Like, you know, and they're like, oh, yeah, actually. And then each time you do it, you can ask a question like that, get a personal
mm,
response, and then add a value added response after that. So, for example, if someone says, oh, I hate those nose pads, they always catch in my hair, they fall off, this sort of thing, go, right. So we'll only focus on frames with fixed bridge frames. Now, when we're looking at a fixed bridge frame, what's super important is that it fits you well. It's like choosing a pair of shoes. You need to have the right size for your nose. It's not all
right.
fixed bridge frames are the same. So when we're looking at glasses, we're going to look for a frame where there's no gaps between your nose and the top of the frame, and not too much of a gap between your nose and the sides of the frame to avoid it rubbing or slipping. And then, so I'll be very conscious when I'm trying on these glasses that it fits really
Mm,
well. And that's how someone could have said, the glasses are only for reading. And then when they put them on, they say, oh, yeah, I hate those nose pads. But you're now, when they're looking at glasses, rather than just looking for what the cheapest ones are, they're looking for the ones that fit them best. Because the thing is with a fixed bridge frame, it doesn't impact the price. Do you know what I mean? Like having a different
mm,
shape to the bridge of the nose, does it? Like, but it does, it is a way that you can start to get people to understand the differences between fit and feel. And so when people do that, let's say there's a frame that's, I'm sorry about, I don't know currency differences, but here, like let's say it's £10 for this frame and £20 for that one. But then if they can suddenly see that, oh, I can see how that one's got that gap and that's going to rub me over
right.
time. Whereas this one, okay, it's £10 more, but it fits me perfectly. You know, people start to understand the things to look for that are going to work well for. There's always something you can do to add value, and that'll increase the dispense values for you in practice as well. But you're also really helping that person to have comfortable and better fitting eyewear. So the questions that you ask are really important. So I generally ask about 4 or 5 key questions, and then each time they give me a response, I give a value added response to that. So that's how I managed to tailor it to the individual, rather than it be, you know, generic, based on just, oh, it's your face shape is that, so therefore you should have this,
Mm.
if you know what I mean.
And wonderful, wonderful key insights. So now, then I will be using your this platform to use your expertise. I'm going to try some sunglasses. So you're gonna rate them out of 10, and then in the end, you got to tell me which one, according to you, fits me well or suits me and why. Okay, so I
Okay.
hope so we can do that. So this is the first one which I'm going to try, and
Okay.
yes, please calm
Ah,
down.
interesting. So you've kind of gone for a red
Yeah,
tint in the lens
yes,
there.
yes,
That's kind of cool. I bet, does it feel quite nice to look through those, I bet?
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So the next one is
Nice
the
bit.
one I'm going to try from Philip Line, and this goes like
Oh,
this.
cool.
So
Nice. Really
it
bold
gives
and
me that
luxury.
look.
Love that one.
Yeah, the bold luxury look.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I've got this one from Tom
Mm-hmm.
Ford. So it goes
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh
this.
yeah. A nice smart fit. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
I
which
think
one? Pick one.
yeah, so for me, like I think obviously they all offer slightly different things. And I think this is
Yeah.
important when we're doing personal styling rather than just generic, is to ask sort of like what the impact you want of them is. But for me, the
Mm,
second pair was the most exciting. as something a bit
Wow.
different. And I love people that embrace eyewear, rather than just shy away
Wow.
from it, do something classic, because I just thought there was
So
something
this one.
really cool about that floating bridge on the top, and the shaping's just a
Okay.
bit different. So yeah, I thought that was just a really funky, exciting option. I'd be like, oh, he's a cool dude. Like,
Great, 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 great. Thanks for that. And so now, what do you think? What are some common mistakes that people make when they choose an eyewear, and how do you help them avoid these pitfalls?
right. So there's some really obvious common mistakes. I think one common mistake is for people who have higher prescriptions to invest a lot of money in their lenses and then go cheap in the frame. Okay. And because they think, oh, I've
True.
spent all this on the lens, so I don't really want to spend much on the frame. Now, the reason that that is a huge mistake is it's something that, again, I don't think is taught enough in the industry in terms of how to judge value for money when it comes to
Mm,
frames. So one of the huge things is generally when we've got higher prescriptions, people go for high index lenses, don't they? To
right,
reduce the
right,
thickness, to reduce the
right.
weight. Now, if someone's short-sighted, that's going to mean, and they go for a 1.74 high-index lens, they're going to with a very flat and very rigid
Right,
lens.
right.
Now, the issue with that is if you go for a cheap frame, mass-produced acetates and plastics are very soft. So what that means is, obviously, most frames are made with a certain base curve, which can follow our forehead and things like that. So if you've got a naturally curved frame like that, but then you put in a very rigid flat lens
Mm,
into a soft frame, what happens is it slowly straightens out the frame and the arm starts splaying
true,
out like this. So then it's
true.
constantly slipping down their nose, slipping down their nose. It's hard to bring it back. You try and apply some heat at the bridge, bring it back, but then it reverts back to its shape again. So
Right.
what's really, really important is that people with high index lenses go for a more rigid frame material. More rigid frame materials are
Mm,
things like cured acetates. So the top acetate in the world is like
okay.
Japanese acetate, or you
Mm,
can get Mazzucchelli acetate. Now, there are varying qualities of Mazzucchelli acetate. There are some softer and some more rigid. What I've found through doing a bit of research and chatting to people in the industry, it comes down to the curing process. So, for example, brands like Arlem, they're a French brand. They make all of their acetate is cured for 6 months to make sure it's nice
oh.
and rigid and holds its shape. And that's the reason we need to be asking people, why do you do this in the manufacturing process?
True.
Japanese acetate, again, it's always really nice and rigid. So works well with high prescriptions because it holds its shape and doesn't bow out. So I'd say that's a common mistake that I find. And that's also my common solution to that problem. It does require obviously more investment from the client, but I find if people aren't aware of it, they can't know to do that. So if you don't teach your clients what the value
Right.
difference is in those frames, and they think one
Mm,
frame that's £300 does the same job as a frame that's £100, then they're just going to invest in the cheaper one. You need to educate them on the value difference, and essentially
right.
the higher quality acetates hold their shape better, which is better for you. And especially if you're in a hot country like India and stuff like that as well, then I think
Yes,
like
yes.
a rigid frame is going to be far, far better for you than a mass produced soft frame, which is going to keep losing its shape and falling and slipping. You need constant adjustments. So yeah, that would be
Wow.
one of my tips.
Wow. That's an amazing point of view. And, a point of view like the older the wine, the tastier it is, the better it is. The same way, like the how
Yeah.
much curated and asset it is. And sometimes as opticians, we ourselves, we fail to look at these aspects when choosing the frames and showcasing it to our customers and
Mm.
clients.
And I think it's also
Moving ahead.
important to appeal
Yeah.
to the ophthalmic optometrists on this point as well,
Mm,
because I know there's a
yes.
lot of clinical people that will kind of like think of the lens, the lens, the lens, and the frame is just
Mm,
something that houses it. Now, what you need
right.
to think, let's say you do your prescription, you've done it in the testing room with the trial frame, you've passed that on to the dispensing optician, and if the dispensing optician takes all the measurements off that frame, but then the frame is completely different. It sits further away from their face. It's flatter. It's different to how they've taken it at the time. Then the vision
Mm,
isn't going to be as good in the lenses because the shape and the base curve of the frame have changed at the point that
correct.
they've received their lenses in it. So if you want your
True.
clients to get the best vision, it's actually really important that you have a frame that retains its shape when you put high index lenses in it as well. And I think that's a
Very
really
true.
useful
Very true.
point for ophthalmic optometrists to take into account as well as the
True, true,
dispensing
true, true,
opticians.
true. Definitely, definitely. And I'm one of the dispensing optometrists over here.
Sweet.
So moving ahead. So what's been your most memorable experience as an eyewear stylist?
So I say I'd probably give a couple like of answers to this. One of my most memorable experiences was quite an emotional one for me, because and I
Okay.
think this gets lost a lot in the optics industry is how much we're impacting people's self-esteem when we're choosing eyewear. Because there's so many people that feel unattractive and ugly in their glasses, you know, and there's a lot of contact lens wearers out there, I think, that are only wearing the contact lenses not because they're easier, but just because they hate how they look in glasses. So I had
Mm,
a client, Julie, who she'd always take her glasses off. Anytime people were taking pictures of her, she'd always take them off because she just hated how she looked in them. She always has. And so when she came to see me and with her friend for support and things, I wanted to find some glasses that she could finally feel confident in. It meant the world to me because she, in her Google review of me, she attached a picture of her wearing her
okay.
glasses in her Google review. And I knew how much that meant to her. So that was quite overwhelming at the time. And I kind of like shed a few
Wow.
tears because I was like,
Wow.
to know that you've done that for someone, like you've had that impact on their life where they can finally feel confident in just being themselves, like in their glasses.
Mm,
That was one huge moment for me. I think another one, which I'm really excited about, which unfortunately can't talk about all of the details yet until they finish filming. But I recently got approached by the New York a props department in New York for a major Hollywood film, for me to provide the
wow.
glasses, yeah,
Great.
for the lead actor in that film to wear
Oh,
for the entirety of the film. So I'm actually going to be in the credits of the movie as well as Dan Scott, the
wow.
eyewear stylist, and I'll have supplied the glasses to the lead actor for that film.
Great.
So
Great, great,
that's
great.
super exciting.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting and sounds, awesome. So now, coming from India, we guys also see, and now I think across the globe, people do follow a lot of, believe in zodiac signs and all such stuff.
Mhm.
Here, when we talk in India, we have, the jewelries which appeals or which are specifically made for people for specific zodiac signs. There are colored stones for specific zodiac signs, things like that. So do you think that, those things, those aspects it should also be or can be implemented into a pair of eyeglasses for them?
They can definitely. So I was actually measuring up a client last year, actually, for us to make some glasses for him out of solid 18 karat gold.
Mhm.
And you can take all of the measurements, all of the facial measurements, and design it together. And I think there's definitely a market for opticians to collaborate with jewelers with that.
Mm.
I actually did it for a client not too long ago where we had actually so this frame that I'm wearing actually, you see how there's this silver metal bar in the top here, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
there's
yes.
some screws behind it which you can screw in and out.
Right,
So I had a
right.
client that had this in an orange, and he wanted stuff to go with his gold items of clothing and his jewelry. And so I did gold mirror extractive transitions as the lenses. So when he went outside, he turned into a
Oh,
gold mirror. But what I also did is I got this metal bar taken out and I got it sent to jewelers and 22 karat gold plated so that the metal bar
wow.
would be gold and go with the lenses and go with his clothes and stuff like that. So I think just think outside the box, and there's definitely something to be said for collaborating with
Mm.
jewelers as well. You can customize things. Remember, you can always customize, like and jewelers are expert with metals, so don't be afraid of if you've got someone that's got a frame that they like. Just speak to a jeweler and find out what could we do with this, like if we wanted to make it a
Right,
bit more
right.
special. Mhm.
True. Perfect. And what do you see are the biggest challenges and opportunities in the eyewear industry?
I think sustainability is a
Mm.
huge one. Like I think that and greenwashing happens a lot. There's a lot of people saying that that eco acetate and things like that. Well, the thing
Mm.
is that acetate can never like truly be sustainable in the sense that there's acetone, acetic acid as a component of it. But you get a lot of people saying it's plant-based acetate. Well,
Mm.
all acetate is plant-based, all of it,
Mm.
because it has to. It's either a cotton base or a wood base. You tend to find the slightly more eco ones will be the wood base, and that's because they can get the FSC accreditation from the Forest Stewardship Council when they're doing it, to make sure it's ethically farmed and ethically sourced, rather
Mm.
than cotton, which is a lot more water intensive. A lot of it comes from China, and you haven't got the same ways of being able to check it's been as like ethically sourced. It's less impact on the environment. So I think sustainability and greenwashing is a huge one. And another one, as I said, I really think we have to start communicating to people how to judge value for money with glasses. Because the problem
Great.
is, if people think of glasses as a price, and if you try and compete on price, you're going to race to the bottom. Okay. Whereas if you
True.
compete on value, you're going to race to the top. So we really have to start educating people to understand why a frame costs more than another one, and the same also with lenses, and stop trying to talk about this is the cheapest, we do the cheapest, because all you're doing is lowering your margins, and you're just going to go right down
Mm.
to nothing. You need to
True.
start explaining this is why this frame is more than this one, and show the benefits. This is why this lens works better than here, and then people can start understanding it, and they can make better decisions. So I'd say those are some of the two big things. I think sustainability in our industry, there's so much plastic waste, and I think that you've got to be worried about that, because some big companies, have been really taken to task on the fact that, especially in the fashion industry, it's hitting a lot. I think if you're clever, you need to be ahead of the game and start really trying to be more sustainable with what you're doing, because people are being more considered with their purchases now, and it's starting to hit the consumer a bit more, certainly in the UK. And then
Mm.
the second one, obviously, like I say, just helping to judge value for money, so that then you're not getting everyone being price conscious, they're being value conscious.
Value issues. Yes. Yes. And I think it's the same trend going on in India as well that we see on day-to-day basis. And what trends do you predict, will shape the future of eyewear fashion and opticianry at large?
Mhm. So what I'm seeing just in terms of fashion, so what I noticed from the latest trade show that I went to in Milan was I'm seeing a lot more of contouring of eyewear. Let me just quickly grab an
Okay.
example of this sort of
Mm.
thing. And so I'm just going to show you this frame. I'm just going to see how well it comes up. But can you see
Yeah.
the sort of like the way that that's been curved, like sort of
Right.
like
Right.
in,
Right.
rather than
Inside.
it just being considered sort of like just 2D, there's kind of like contouring sort of inside. I started noticing that between quite a few different brands in Milan this year. So just
Mm.
something a bit more different in the shape, not just the
Sure it is.
traditional shapes. And I'm also noticing when it comes to lenses, a lot more people going for fashion tints in their lenses. As I
Mm.
was wearing, obviously, initially on the call, like this friend, which kind of got that pink fashion tint. I've got
Right.
another frame here, one of these gold frames, that's kind of got a light brown fashion tint. So
Ah,
in terms of
nice.
fashion and treating eyewear as fashion, I think it's really important we communicate to clients that eyewear is the combination of a frame and a lens. It's some
Lens.
people just think of it as just the frame that houses a
Mm.
lens. Whereas actually, you can completely transform a pair of glasses. I could change this tint to a blue tint, and it'll completely change how
Mm.
this pair of glasses looks. And it's
True.
also a way you can transform things for your current clients. Like, so a current client that's got an old frame that they still like, consider
Yeah.
putting a bit of a tint in there or a different type of lens to revamp it, and then keep it kind of on a bit more on trend. That's something I consider for people, and they really love it when they do that, and you can completely change things for people.
Yeah, amazing tip, amazing tip. And we can, actually make them utilize their old frames and they would
Hmm.
love that.
Yeah.
So now coming to the question, your favorite celebrity in India for whom you would like to style eyewear, why?
Uh, so I think I don't know whether this is like a selfish thing, but like Priyanka Chopra, like would
Ooh.
be wouldn't be the worst person to walk into my studio to buy some glasses for. If we could have a diary full of people like that, how wonderful would that be? Eh? But I think because it's you want to see clients that embrace fashion, and that are fashionable and considerate. And I think she'd be someone that I could style in something very expressive and would just be able to take it, and really express herself. So some really awesome, like sort of like cat eye sunglasses or something, a bit of drama there, I think would be great. Yeah, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, and there is another celebrity in India who's pretty famous. You might have not heard of his name, but you should definitely check him out. His name is Rajnikant, and he's famously called as a Thalaiva. He's a South Indian superstar actor,
Mhm.
and irrespective of his films, whatever eyewear he wears in any film, it becomes a trend. So he's truly a trendsetter. The way he wears an eyewear, whatever he wears, it becomes a trend. He sets the tone of eyewear trend in India truly, and for Indians globally, I would say.
It's
So
so great
when
when you
you,
see people doing that, isn't it? Because I think it's
yeah,
so easy to use very classic frames, and that's why I really love people that I was doing some recent reviews of celebrity eyewear on my TikTok,
huh,
and a few on my Instagram, where I was just looking at some of them, and you could see that's like, yeah, it's okay, but it's just kind of been done. Whereas I saw some of Kim Kardashian's like sunglasses, and she wears some mad ones with like fur on and things. I
right,
was like,
right, right.
that's what I love to see, because the thing is with glasses is I thought they were boring. Growing up, I thought glasses are boring. But then when you go to these trade shows across the world and you see all of this amazing stuff, it's
Mm,
like I just wish more people knew about that. And the more we can get celebrities sort of embracing eyewear, I know Elton John goes a bit over the top with some of his and things like that.
yes,
But
yes,
it is great to see people when they embrace it, because it inspires people to do
true,
more with it.
amazing. What advice would you give to aspiring opticians and eyewear stylists? Because I'm sure after this interview, there are a lot of
Mhm.
people who would want to explore this as their career.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think like what you need to do is just expand your horizons. I think like beyond just looking in our industry. I think it's useful to look outside of the industry, as I've done as well. So speak with personal stylists. Learn from them as well. I mean, I do training obviously for people, opticians in the UK and across the world, in how to kind of develop your eyewear styling processes. I think it's also really important that you um make the time like available for you to achieve those personal styling results, like and realize how many elements of the process in your business impact your customer's journey, whether that's how you book appointments, whether that's allowing the time, and having a process for everything is going to set you up for success. But yeah, I think I definitely would recommend traveling to trade shows to broaden your horizons, see what's out there, so you're not becoming dated. Speak with other people across the world about what they're doing, and look into other industries. And obviously, if anyone had any questions about wanting to look into more styling and things, then feel free to contact me. I'm happy to offer any advice in that area, as I do a lot of talks on it in this country already. But I'd love to do it more across the world, which would be fabulous.
True. So I now we come to a segment where you need to just answer in one word. So I'll be giving you two options. So it's more like a rapid fire sort of a thing, a very small one and a short one. So your first love, optionary or music?
Music was my first love.
Difficult one.
Music.
Music. Okay. So what do you choose? What do you prefer? Metals or acetates?
Acetates for me. Acetates for me. So much more
Great.
comfy.
So and another preference: the darker tints or the lighter tints of lenses in terms of
I
styling.
think, yeah, I think lighter tints, because then you're wearing them as a fashion tint rather than as a sunglass.
Okay. So what's more important, brand or the comfort? I think that's the easy
Yeah, comfort, straight up every time.
one. So another one. So brand name or how does it fit and how does it look? Or the customized frames, I would say.
100% how it fits and how it looks every time. Like, go for what's best for you. What not just serve. In life, we need to just realize it's important to do things for our own happiness rather than doing things for how we want other people to feel about us. I think it's just kind of, and that's what we need to do there, like for fit and feel, definitely on that question.
So wonderful, wonderful. What a session we had today with you, Dan, and so much to learn. And in that perspective, because as an optician, sometimes we get just saturated with our thinking, with our approach, and we think that it's only the technicalities which are important. But I guess
Mm,
with today's generation that we are dealing, Gen Z, Alpha generation now, talking about the styles, talking about the colors, the color coding, all these factors are far more important, and including, rightly pointed out by you, even the sustainability is an important issue in today's world and going ahead in the future. And
mm,
talking ahead, more than brands, it is, I think, the customizable options, the comfort, and the kinds, how it fits on the person's face and how comfortable they are with their eyewear is very important. And in this world today, you cannot just sell value only in terms of a brand. You need to sell value in terms of, and you need to explain that in bit more detail. We have to be aware as opticians what kind of materials are there, how the manufacturing process goes into
yeah.
it, and what's the story behind it, and how it's going to be, beneficial for the client to go for that. And I think
Mm.
if any client is convinced that it's really going to benefit me and it's going to be advantageous for me, I think in today's world, people are ready to pay. And people are ready to pay, and people are ready to afford and invest into a good pair of eyeglasses, which is like a face jewelry and the first impression a person
Yeah,
carries on them.
it's so important that we educate and inspire. The thing is, the average person doesn't know what's possible with glasses. They don't know what to
100%.
look for. We are the advisors, and so it's. I think it's like we need to be knowing how to communicate. As I said, value for money.
Mm,
We need to be communicating how to find the right fit. The right colors and things. And also, especially if you want to differentiate. As an independent optician versus than in a multiple and things like that, then I think these things you're going to be giving so much more value to your clients. And the thing is for me, I kind of don't care what people choose as long as they've got an informed decision, and I think that's the thing. If you haven't informed people of the options, then they're not making an informed decision. Do you know what I mean?
exactly.
And I think that's something that we really, really need to do. And so I've started getting CPD accreditation on parts of modules that I deliver now, on things like this modern frame materials one, because it's something that I think even as opticians, we're not amazing at asking why enough. Ask the
Mm,
question why. So when you're
why?
going to see like frame manufacturers and they cost a bit, if something costs more, just ask why, and and keep asking why. Because if it's like, oh, and they're using these materials, don't just leave it at that. Well, yeah, but why are you using those materials? And
True.
start to get to the thing that the reason they've done it, because they know that there's a reason it communicates value. So, for example, I discovered these lenses last year, or 2 years
Mm,
ago now, actually, in Milan. Now, what happened was I saw them, they had these lenses and they had these laser beams of light going across and different things. And I was going, what's going on here? What's happening here? And he's like, well, this blocks out UV, this blocks out blue light, and this blocks out infrared. And I was like, yeah, but why does that matter? Why does that matter? And the UV we know a bit about. And I was like, why does it matter if they block out infrared? But he goes, well, infrared, it actually cuts a lot deeper into the tissue of the skin and causes
yes.
the muscle tissue of the skin
Yes.
to weaken
Yes.
and therefore wrinkles to develop. And these lenses,
Mm,
by blocking that, essentially slow the development of wrinkles and reduce dark circles around the eyes.
right.
So I said,
Right.
so you've invented anti-aging glasses then? And he's like, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, and all you're doing is showing bandwidths of light. It's like
Yes.
you need to have in massive letters here. Anti-aging glasses slows
Anti-aging
the
glasses.
development of wrinkles around your eyes. I think a lot of
Wow.
optics, people get lost in the science and forget we need to
Right.
communicate value to the client. What
Mm,
makes a difference to that individual? If you tell one of your female clients, obviously men as well, you said, oh, we've got anti-aging glasses, it slows wrinkles developing around your eyes. How many people do
wow.
you think are like, oh, give me a pair of those?
True. True.
Versus if you told a client, oh, do you want some infrared blocking like lenses? They'd be like,
Yeah.
no, I'm okay for that, thank
They'll
you.
not even understand.
Exactly. So it's
So
really
that value
important for you to
proposition
keep
has
asking
to
your
be there.
suppliers why, find the value, and then communicate that to the client.
What an amazing way of putting it forward. And last year I was traveling in one of the trade shows and I came across one of these amazing glasses, electrochromic lenses.
Yes.
So there is a button there. You just click a button to that,
Yeah.
the print history. So the amazing, the things which are coming up in future are far more interesting. And I think the
Mm.
way you're putting forward things, people are believing now that eyewear is an important accessory for them. And it enhances their look. Like you rightly mentioned earlier, that people used to feel that that we will be subjected to all form of humor and that low self-esteem and other things with the glasses. People used to associate that. Now people
Mm.
associate glasses with like fashion and with their personality and their persona and
Mm.
way. And people who are watching this, advice to you: you see Dan, how he flipped his glasses beautifully during the entire show,
Music change.
and he assured that what is it? Yes, see, the another one goes now. Great.
Mhm.
This
These
is
are one of my this is one of my favorite ranges. These are made from vinyl records because obviously in my music
wow.
background, I love this. How they repurpose vinyl records. So the front of this
Oh
frame is
wow.
made from
Great.
AC/DC's
Yes,
Back in
yes,
Black
yes.
album. So
Yes.
cool.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And this is how exactly you're going to, tell to the people, to the outside world, to your customers, to your clients, that eyewear is not just a boring thing to wear.
Yeah.
Eyewear is something so much interesting and which adds
Yeah.
so much value to your personality. Bro.
And it's
So,
especially for your personal brand and business success. Think about your profile photo and your headshot, whether that's on
yeah,
LinkedIn or it's on
right,
Instagram, whatever it is. All you've got to
right.
communicate your personality is in that shot. So if you're
Is
wearing
that
a very
sure?
bland pair of glasses, what type of person are you trying to say that you are? If I'm suddenly wearing these
Mm,
bright, bold glasses, just changing into these, you immediately think a more
yes,
creative person. So consider eyewear as part of your personal brand because it can actually influence your business success in terms of standing
true,
out. And then also,
true.
like we're doing now, when people are on Zoom calls, we can't see what shoes we've got on, can we? For all you know, I'm wearing
Yes.
pajama bottoms. I promise I'm not. I do have like a suit which matches, and I do actually have
Oh,
really funky shoes as well. But
wow.
in this meeting, your eyewear is the main way of you dressing for a
Yes,
meeting over Zoom.
100%.
So it's really communicating the value of eyewear in your personal brand, how it can influence your business success, your personal success, your happiness, your self-esteem. And as CEOs, I've done a lot of CEOs that used to not really realize, and since I've styled them in these glasses, they start getting known for their glasses. Oh my gosh, I love those. I love those. More conversations are happening,
Wow.
because of that, and it can inspire a lot of things. So eyewear can do so much for you. And I think there's so many areas for you to consider, everything from color to frame material to lens types, but making sure we're communicating that value to people. And yeah, just broaden your horizons a bit, definitely.
So amazing, amazing. So much of learning, an amazing show that we had today. And thank you, Dan, for spending some time with us and sharing your knowledge so openly. And it was pleasure talking to you and learning so much. And looking forward to meet you, maybe host you in India or maybe
Yeah,
sometime in one of the shows, traveling there, and maybe we'll group in together and I'll take your suggestions on what to buy and what not to buy. And so,
yeah,
guys, summing this up, this amazing sessions today, and I hope there are lots of key takeaways that you have. And do not forget, follow the Eyewear Stylist on Instagram. He's there. You can follow him. You can see how he's creating, how he's adding value to people's life, and you can learn. Yes, there is always a scope of learning from each other in today's world, and it's very easy, it's very simple. So let's stay connected. Dan, it was pleasure talking to you. It was an amazing session to have you on board, and thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you so much, and
thank
thank you,
you.
friends, for watching this.